said that Michael Flynn would come back even bigger and better. So are you going to pardon him? And if so, are you considering to bring him back into your administration?
Well, it looks to me like Michael Flynn would be exonerated based on everything I see. I'm not the judge, but I have a different type of power. But I don't know that anybody would have to use that power. I think he's exonerated everything. I've never seen anything like it. What they did, what they wrote, you see this, General. You wouldn't want this happening to you, what they did to General Flynn.
That is U.S. President Donald Trump yesterday talking about bringing back General Flynn, who was the target of an FBI sting operation to knock him out of Trump's office and perhaps bring down Trump himself. But new evidence has emerged that he was set up deliberately by the FBI. Joining us now from the Los Angeles area via Skype is our friend Joel Pollak, senior editor-at-large at Breitbart.com. Help explain this, Joel. Hi, great to see you. Not all Canadians, and even not all Americans, know who General Flynn is. Tell us who he is, and tell us how he got thrown out of the Trump administration and why he might be coming back.
Well, first of all, General Michael Flynn is a military veteran career officer, over 3 decades of experience. He actually served in the Obama administration before having something of a falling out with them. And he joined the Trump campaign. And for the last several months of the Trump campaign in 2016, he was the warm-up speaker. Whenever you saw Michael Flynn come to the stage, you knew Trump was coming next. And Trump liked being introduced by a retired general. And then once Trump won, General Flynn became the architect of Trump's national security policy. And he took a lot of the policies that he had supported during the Obama years, which Obama had not supported, and he used his views to shape President Trump's national security agenda. And he was in the process of implementing all of his policies in early January 2017, just after President Trump took office, when the FBI conducted what amounts to a sting operation against him, but they were investigating something that isn't really a crime. They set up a meeting with him at the White House without warning him that they were investigating him, and they brought senior officials in, they schmoozed with him, he gave them a tour of his new offices in the West Wing and so forth. It was a friendly visit. They never told him, as they're required to do by their own policy, that he was a target of investigation, and their whole purpose now, it appears, was to try to get him to lie about something or to get him to claim to them that he had not spoken to the Russian ambassador when in fact he had. When he was preparing to come into office with President Trump, he had calls with world leaders, he spoke to policymakers, all that sort of thing. And it just so happened that there was an intercept, a wiretap on the phone calls with the Russian ambassador, a guy named Sergei Kislyak. And Flynn spoke twice to Kislyak. In one instance, he mentioned sanctions. The Obama administration, attempting, in a sense, to shut the door after the horse had bolted, they tried to accuse Russia of interfering in the election, and they slapped sanctions on some Russians living in the United States. They closed a Russian facility of some sort. And Flynn called the Russian ambassador to say, let's not escalate this. Let's just start fresh in the new administration, more or less. That was later described as Flynn telling them not to sweat the new sanctions, which isn't quite what he said. But in any case, he had this conversation with the Russian ambassador. The FBI picked it up, and it was leaked illegally to the Washington Post, which published the fact that he had this conversation. That created embarrassment for Flynn because he told the vice president, apparently, that he hadn't discussed sanctions with Kislyak, and maybe he just hadn't remembered. Maybe the word sanctions hadn't been used. Maybe he simply said, let's not get into a tit for tat. I think the phrase tit for tat was used. But in any case, the FBI then tried to meet with Flynn, and they were investigating him under something called the Logan Act of 1799. The Logan Act prevents private citizens from conducting diplomacy. The charge would be that Flynn, before he became National Security Advisor, was not entitled to talk to the Russian ambassador about American foreign policy. But a National Security Advisor, even one who's just coming in and hasn't taken office, is arguably entitled to conduct diplomacy because they're preparing a transition to a new administration. And also, no one is ever prosecuted over the Logan Act. Yes, we want to discourage private individuals from conducting diplomacy, like John Kerry, retired Secretary of State, going to Iran and telling them to wait out the Trump administration. Trump now calls that a violation of the Logan Act. He wouldn't have said that until they went after Flynn. But anyway, Trump now says that's a violation of the Logan Act, and Trump's right. That's the kind of thing the Logan Act is intended to discourage, but it's never been criminally prosecuted, or maybe once or twice, very, very rarely. And anyway, they cooked up this idea of going after Flynn on the basis of the Logan Act. They used that to try to entrap him in what they call a process crime, where he misstates something or misremembers something. You can be prosecuted for lying to the FBI if you simply misremember something. So they got him to misremember or misstate something. He, of course, didn't know he was being interviewed. He was just talking to senior officials in law enforcement, welcoming the new administration, as far as he thought. And in any case, they then charged him with lying to the FBI. They forced him, in a sense, to plead guilty and strike a plea bargain because they allegedly were going to go after Flynn's son, who apparently worked for a company Flynn ran that did lobbying, and the son hadn't properly disclosed something about contacts with Turkey, some nonsense, basically. But they threatened to go after his son, and so Flynn finally said, okay, I'll plead guilty, and he resigned from the administration. He was actually asked to resign because they said he had lied to the vice president about this discussion of sanctions. But of course, the Trump administration didn't know what was going on. They just knew what the media were saying. They knew what the FBI was saying. They knew what they'd been told internally, but very hard in this fog of war to understand exactly what had happened. The movement behind Trump was outraged that this had happened to Flynn, and they feel he was, and still feel that they felt and feel that he was being set up. And now the new evidence emerged this week that in fact he was being set up, that the FBI knew what they were doing. They knew they hadn't warned him that they were going to be investigating him. They also tried to close the case. There were normal career officials at the FBI who said there's nothing to investigate here. We can't find anything, quote unquote, derogatory about him. And then senior officials in the FBI, including Peter Strzok, but also acting on the orders of the chief executive offices in the FBI, they kept the case open. It's clear that they were trying to use Flynn to get at bigger fish, to get at Trump, and maybe simply just to disrupt the new administration, because they were talking in notes that have emerged this week, talking about trying to get him to lie or getting him fired.
That's an excerpt from my daily show, The Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.